So for more on the potential outcomes of the elections, we're joined from our Cape Town studios by political analyst Daniel Silke. Good morning, Daniel. So a lot being said about the possibility of a hung parliament, although Lib Dems, or those who've been shown to be seen as possibly swinging their vote either the way of the Conservatives or Labour. Are they that fickle, do you think?
I think that voters, as they come to make their choice at the polls today, are more undecided than ever in the United Kingdom. And if they are undecided, it's very possible that at the last moment, the smaller party of the three, historically, which was the Lib Dems, may see their support still going with the safe havens of the larger parties that they'd supported for many, many elections before. So the Lib Dem vote is more swingable. And I think it's very possible that they might not do quite as well as possible as voters go for the parties that they know, the two big ones, the Labours and the Tories.
Well, we're looking at some of the opinion polls coming out of the UK. YouGov poll sees the Tories leading Labour and the Lib Dems by about 7 points or so. How significantly do you think that is going to change today, Daniel?
I don't think we're going to see too much of a shift in terms of the percentage points in terms of the polls. Clearly, the Tory lead, which is anywhere between 5 to 7 or 8 points, is not enough to give the Conservatives an outright majority. They probably will be the largest political party, but well short of that majority. They will need a coalition partner. For that matter, the Labour, who might come second or even third in the popular vote, might well still be able to cobble together a coalition with the Liberal Democrats. You must remember, Gordon Brown has not yet been popularly elected by the British public, and in a sense this also has created a degree of uncertainty with the electorate.
Of course, there are a lot of debates, a lot of issues that are plaguing the UK at the moment in terms of the war in Iraq, the economy. Couple that with the idea of, or the research that we're getting on about voter apathy in the UK. Do you think that these will galvanise more voters than traditionally go to the polls to actually show up today and make their mark?
Yes, absolutely. I think the televised debates have been a new phenomenon for Britain. It's caused the era of personality politics to emerge after a long time in the UK. It's always been there in the US, but never in the UK. And I think television, the media, electronic media have played an amazing role in galvanizing people, especially young people. And we are likely to see more voters and especially young people come to the polls. And of course, young people are looking for something fresh. And I think Nick Clegg and the Liberal Democrats have provided that impetus for an increased excitement in the UK election campaign.
One of the other issues is electoral reform that's mooted by Clegg's party. Just how much will that kind of feed into the way people are thinking?
I think this is going to be one of the most important issues after the election. It's very possible that the Liberal Democrats could come second or third with 27, 28% of the vote. Yet they could be the kingmakers, yet they might get very few seats in Parliament. And there will be question marks about the Westminster system, about the fact that an exciting party like the Liberal Democrats in this election was perhaps unable to really win seats. They're winning votes, but they're not going to win seats. And there'll be tremendous pressure on the entire British constitutional system after this election to reform the electoral procedure, to even perhaps move towards some sort of proportional representation system, a mixed system perhaps, almost like what we have here in this country.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of talk about coalition governments now, after this election, if it emerges that it is a hung parliament. Do you think then that the will of the British people will be adequately represented if that is the scenario we're faced with?
Well, I think the real issue in terms of coalitions is which parties are ideologically closer to one another. The strange irony is that the Conservatives, if they get the most votes and perhaps the most seats in the election, are ideologically more isolated. The Lib Dems and Labour ideologically are much closer together, and it would be much easier for those two parties probably to work in coalition. But having said that, any coalition in Britain now is going to mean a degree of unstable government for the United Kingdom. Coalition governments might be good in the short term to get the country back on track. But in the medium term, when parties squabble over policy, who will make decisions in future, who will get key positions down the line, you'll see a degree of tension back in the British system. And I wouldn't be surprised if a coalition government means another relatively early election for British voters in a few years' time.
Now, the Queen plays a largely ceremonial role, but this is one of the areas where she can actually play an active role in the event of a hung parliament. Just take us through some of the level of her involvement should this emerge, should this scenario emerge.
Well, really, the Queen, of course, is the constitutional head of Britain, but ultimately it will be up to the political parties themselves to hammer out some sort of coalition deal. What's going to be extremely difficult is if all the parties end up with 28 to 35% of the vote, as the polls suggest, there's a hung parliament, there will be a few days in the United Kingdom where, although Gordon Brown is likely to remain on as the Prime Minister whilst negotiations are taking place, the party leaders themselves will be hammering out this deal. The Queen clearly is always the fallback position within the United Kingdom, but it will be up to the hard cut-and-thrust negotiations to sort out who will lead the country.
This is going to certainly be an intriguing election process to watch. Thanks, Daniel, for your insight. Political analyst Daniel Silke joining us from Cape Town.